Sister Linda is a working woman, a community activist, and a mother of three. Ambitious, outspoken, and independent, she shatters stereotypes of Muslim women while also treasuring her religious and ethnic heritage. Sister Linda is a Palestinian Muslim American and a self-proclaimed pure New Yorker. A lot of people tell me I sound like I'm from New York, sister, so if you recognize that and you can verify it, please let me know, because I want to prove a lot of people wrong. She was born and raised in Brooklyn, and she is currently the National Advocacy Director for the National Network for Arab American Communities and Access, and locally serving as Director of the Arab American Community in New York City. Sister Linda was chosen as the 2013 American Muslim of the Year by the Council of Islam on American and Islamic Relations. And once again, I said personally, I'm thrilled, and so many people are thrilled to have her with us today. So please welcome her with a loud salawat ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad.
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على سيدنا محمد وآل سيدنا محمد. Assalamu alaikum. I don't know why, but I'm nervous today. I'm usually not nervous, but I think I'm nervous because I'm very privileged and honored in particular to be speaking in front of Imam Sayyid Qazwini. I'm actually really nervous, so bear with me tonight. And no, your accent is not a New York accent. I'm actually lightening mine up tonight so you can understand me, because then you would need a translator. I'm very honored here to be celebrating the life of our beloved Prophet and being able to put the work that I do into context, into an Islamic context, into an American context, into the context that our community needs to understand what it means to be an American Muslim in the United States of America in 2016. Number one, sisters and brothers, I personally believe that we have to start from one very simple place, and that is to be unapologetically Muslim. I am very proud to be an American Muslim, and I operate every single day from that very premise. I don't let anyone question my Islam, and I walk very proudly in the beautiful faith that I follow and in the path of our beloved Prophet, alayhi salatu salam. Sisters and brothers, we're going through very, very rough times. And it's not any news to you. It's not news to Dearborn. It's not news to any Muslim community in any part of the country. And I think one of the reasons why we are going through these rough times is actually more our fault than it is the fault of the Islamophobes and the opposition. It is because, sisters and brothers, they are able to see the weaknesses in our community. They are able to see the cracks in our community, and they fit themselves very neatly in these very cracks in our community. And it is up to us, sisters and brothers, to identify what those weaknesses are and for us to address them together as one Muslim community here in the United States of America. First and foremost, sisters and brothers, our weaknesses, particularly for our young people, come from a place of a lack of understanding of what our history is as American Muslims in this country. There has never been an America without Islam. This country that you live in has never existed without Islam. We have been on the shores of this nation before this nation was even founded. So if our children understood that their lineage as Muslims is so deeply rooted in this nation, they will not be afraid. They will not question who they are as Muslims. They will be able to stand up in the face of the opposition and say, this is my country too. I am an American Muslim and I belong here. So understanding our history, sisters and brothers, is very important into how we operate living in this country that our fellow sisters and brothers also helped build. Recently, I have been doing some research on Islam in America. And I found out that in the 1500s, 200 Muslims helped build something called Roanoke Settlement, which is now known as the shores of North Carolina. It was the first English colony, and it was Muslims that helped build it before the actual founding of the United States of America. So understanding our history, sisters and brothers, is key to building the morale and the confidence of our young people to stand and be unapologetically Muslim. Number two, sisters and brothers, we have a tendency in our community to believe only that Islam is a religion of peace. And Sayyid Qazwini said Islam is a religion of dialogue and a religion of inclusiveness. Yes, yes, and yes. But for me, more importantly than all of those three things is Islam is a religion of justice. And who better to know than my sisters and brothers in the Shia community and the stories of Karbala, that Islam is a religion of justice. So for us to operate in this country with the understanding that justice is not just us. Justice is not just for Muslims. Justice is not just for Sunnis. Justice is not just for Shias. Justice is not just for Palestinians or for Lebanese or for Syrians. Justice is for all people. That is what our faith teaches us. Oftentimes I hear people talking about we need more people to know about Islam. And for me, sisters and brothers, I don't know if telling people how many times we pray or how much we have to give in charity or that we have to do pilgrimage once in our lifetime, I don't know how helpful that information is. I don't know if that's what I want people to know about Islam. If standing on a street corner and giving people pamphlets is the way that we are going to educate people about Islam. I want us to show people what Islam is. Let's stop telling people what Islam is and start showing people the compassion and the love and the justice that our faith teaches us. And how do we do that, sisters and brothers? We can't only be moved when injustices are happening to us or to people that we consider to be part of that group. So if we are Syrians, we are only to care about Syrians. If we are Palestinians, we are to care about Palestinians. If we are black, we care about black people. This, sisters and brothers, has never existed in Islam. Islam was a religion that brought all of us together, regardless of race, regardless of geography, regardless of gender. Islam was a religion that united us all under the love of our Prophet and under one God and only one God. So we have to start emulating what our actual faith is and stop presenting something that actually is not our faith. People say to me, Sister Linda, you're Palestinian, you're Arab, you're from New York, you're Muslim. What is this black civil rights issues that you work on? Why do you do this Black Lives Matter work? It doesn't have anything to do with you. And I say to those people, if you don't believe that Black Lives Matter or the civil rights of black people in America has nothing to do with me, then we all need to go back to the masjid. We all need to open the Quran. We need to understand the seerah of the Prophet, and then we want to come back and dialogue about where Black Lives Matter belongs in our community. Our Prophet, alayhi salatu salam, was one of the originators of Black Lives Matter. Islam is a religion that always said that Black Lives Matter. We didn't make that up last year or 2 years ago. We follow a faith that is a faith of racial justice. We say, our Prophet said, that an Arab is not more superior than a black person is not more superior than an Arab or a white person. That is our faith, sisters and brothers. So what does that look like when we actually live it in life, in public? That means that when we hear about a 12-year-old boy named Tamir Rice who's playing with a toy gun in a park, think about this, sisters and brothers. How many of you during Eid have ever bought your child a toy gun to play with? Imagine your child on your front steps or in a local park playing with his friends with a toy gun, and a local neighbor calls the police. Police ride up, they don't get out of the car, and within 2 seconds in that video, a 12-year-old boy is shot dead. Sisters and brothers, that is our issue. Because when you allow a 12-year-old black boy to die, in his own community, when you don't give him CPR, when you don't call the EMT, when you don't let his sister come to touch him as he's dying on the ground, then you open the pathway for that to happen to our children. So sisters and brothers, when we as Muslims see ourselves in other people, when we see our children in each other, this, sisters and brothers, is the activism that I work from, and that is the activism of my prophet, my beloved prophet, alayhi salatu wasalam, but it is also in the teachings of the very faith that we all follow. On April 13th of last year, I left my family for 9 days, and I marched from Staten Island, New York, where a grandfather, a father named Eric Garner, many of you saw his video on YouTube. According to the police department, he was selling loose cigarettes on the street. And he was taken down by police officers. This is all on video. Millions of viewers have watched this video. Choking him. And he asked, sisters and brothers, 11 times in that video. He said, I can't breathe, I can't breathe, I can't breathe. Where was the rahmah from that police officer when he heard a man calling for breath and he continued to choke him till Eric Garner died? That story moved me, sisters and brothers, because if we allow people in our society, in our neighborhoods, in our communities to be killed on video and to ask to breathe and for us not to give them that breath and not to call an EMT officer, no ambulance came to try to save Eric Garner, I was moved by that. Because if we let that happen to Eric Garner, we're going to allow that to happen to any one of us on the streets. So on April 13th of last year, I left my family. I joined 100 people, and I started in Staten Island, New York, and for 9 days, I marched on Route 1 from Staten Island, New York, all the way to Washington, D.C. 5 states, 250 miles. Only 6 people of the 100 people were Muslim. And I thought about it. I said, how am I going to show these 100 people and all of these people watching us march from New York City to Washington, D.C.? How was I going to use this as an opportunity to show them the beauty of my faith? That my faith is a religion of justice, and I was not just marching because I, as an individual, cared about ending police brutality or because I care about racial justice. I wanted them to understand that I was moved to do this because I knew that my prophet would be proud of us to do this, that he would say that we would be following in the seerah of the prophet by being part of entities and actions and opportunities like these. So I went to Philadelphia. So we got to Philadelphia. I found a masjid in Philadelphia. Of course, every evening we had to find a place to sleep. We had to find a place maybe to shower, maybe not to shower. Sometimes we didn't have showers. Some of the churches that we slept at, they didn't have showers for us. In Philadelphia, we went to stay at a masjid called Al-Hidayah Center. And just the beauty of its name, Al-Hidayah, the gift. And the masjid is run by Palestinian immigrants. And the majority of the people that I was marching with were non-Muslim, and they were black and Latino. We go to the masjid, sisters and brothers, and our community so beautiful. Assalamu alaikum, welcome. Opened the doors to a beautiful masjid. They had a beautiful kitchen. People from the masjid cooked this elaborate meal that they had seen at no other place that we went to. They brought them into the masjid and they said, we have showers here at the masjid. We have computers for you to use. What do you need? And my people looked at me and said, wow. The imam, actually, his English wasn't even very good. He had a hard time articulating, but he didn't need to articulate. He didn't really need to say much. His hospitality and welcoming these people into the masjid and feeding them and giving them a place to sleep was enough for them to understand the beauty and the essence of our faith. And then that night, it was 11 o'clock at night, the imam and his board members and everybody left. And everybody looked at me and said, but where are the people? I said, well, the people have families. They probably went home to sleep with their families. They said, what do you mean, Linda? You mean that the people at this mosque just left 100 strangers in the masjid? I said, yes. Because they trust you, because they know from the virtue of the very act that you are doing that you are good people. And that this house is a house of God and it welcomes all of God's creations, including you. That's why you are in this masjid. And for now, the amana, the security of this mosque is in your hands now for the night that you are sleeping here. We woke up in the morning and we found the same beautiful faces. We heard an adhan. It was like 5 o'clock in the morning and everybody got up and they heard the adhan in the masjid. And there were people that were telling me, sister, I've never felt so peaceful in my heart. What is that beautiful sound? I said, that is a call to prayer. And we stood up and we went to the kitchen and we had breakfast with everyone. We went back out and we had a cargo that takes our stuff, that holds our luggages and holds our stuff. And you see our sisters and brothers with boxes of bananas and 500 cases of water. This is for you to take with you on the rest of your journey. Sisters and brothers, you want to know how to combat Islamophobia? These 100 people that slept at Al-Hidayah Center in Philadelphia are going to be the most staunch supporters of the American Muslim community. They will be the first to stand up in front of the opposition because they have experienced our love and our compassion and the very beauty and hospitality of our faith. That is the Islam that they are going to remember. There is a very famous Black American woman poet that recently passed away. Her name is Maya Angelou. And she says, people barely remember anything that you told them, but they always remember how you made them feel. So when you have interactions with other sisters and brothers, don't focus too much on the details of the words. Focus on how did you make those people feel when they came to the masjid. And the reason why I tell you this story is because I'm telling you about people who are not from our community. The question is, how do we make people feel within our own community? How do I make my Shia sisters and brothers feel comfortable when they come into a space that is my community? How do my Shia sisters and brothers make people like me feel comfortable when I come into your space? And alhamdulillah, I've had only the most wonderful experiences amongst my Shia sisters and brothers. How do we make our Black sisters and brothers in the Muslim community feel safe and feel welcomed and embraced when they come to our spaces? This, sisters and brothers, is Islam. The masajid, they don't belong to board members. They don't belong to imams. They don't belong to the people and the donors. Our masajid belong to Allah. These are the houses of God. So every single person that walks through our doors, Muslim, non-Muslim, regardless of race, sect, has to feel loved because Allah loves all of His creations. And this is the thing that we have to think about when we think about Islamophobia. I don't care about the Islamophobia on the outside. I care about creating a united, steadfast community that is so interconnected that no matter what anybody tries to do, nobody can break us down. Nobody can break those ties between us. That, sisters and brothers, is where that focus needs to be. I watch Dearborn from New York City. I watch Chicago from New York City. I watch Tennessee. I watch all the communities. I watch how different people respond to different things. And I just want to offer some thoughts. And this is not about Dearborn alone. This happens in New York City. It happens in many places. Sisters and brothers, I'm tired of people asking us questions that are so rooted in bigotry amongst us, but we still feel the need to answer these questions. People will ask us, where is the Muslim community on ISIS? And I tell people, I am not going to answer your question because I am offended by your question. That you would think that American Muslims or any Muslim or any human being would actually support the atrocious and horrific acts of groups like ISIS. that you would even think that you would have to ask me a question like that. Sisters and brothers, we have scholars, renowned scholars from all over the world that have written directly to people like al-Baghdadi. If you Google, this is very simple, sisters and brothers. If we say Muslims condemn ISIS, Muslims condemn terrorism, Muslims condemn 9/11, wallahi, you would be on the internet for the next 2 weeks, just going through page by page of how many people and how many leaders and how many organizations have condemned all forms of terrorism. Sisters and brothers, if we are going to be in the business of condemning ISIS and condemning Muslims who commit terrorist attacks, I'm cool with that. Let's do that. But I want the same people, our community, to also condemn the terrorism that is inflicted upon our Muslim sisters and brothers in the Muslim world. How many Muslim sisters and brothers have we killed in unjust wars that we pay for on our taxpayer dollars? What we have to make sure that people understand is that Muslims are consistent in our outrage of terrorism regardless of who is committing that terrorism. I am just as outraged when an American is killed by ISIS as when a Muslim is killed by ISIS. And you know for a fact that ISIS has killed more Muslims than they have killed non-Muslims. Where is the outrage for that? When we only condemn terrorism that is committed by Muslims, immediately what you have done, sisters and brothers, is you have associated yourselves with those people. Those people don't belong to us. We never expect this from any other community. Don't allow anybody to expect that from our community. We send the wrong message to our young people. We have nothing to apologize for, sisters and brothers. We have contributed to this nation. We have built this nation. We have doctors and engineers and entrepreneurs and business owners. We are on the college campuses. We are organizers. We are the best that this country has to offer. And we always have to remember that and remind our children every day, you have nothing to apologize for. You have nothing to be ashamed of. It is because of you that a nation like this exists. It is Islam in America that is part of the fabric of the society. And do not ever let anyone tell you to go back to your country, because my country is Brooklyn, New York. Your country is Dearborn, or whatever part of Michigan that you are from. Moving forward, sisters and brothers, I call on all of us. And this requires us to go to a very deep place. When we think about Islamophobia, when we hear the stories of masajid that are being vandalized, or the death threats to the mosques, or women being harassed in the street for wearing hijab, or our kids being bullied, one thing that we could benefit from is that Islamophobes are very uneducated and misinformed. When a man attacks a woman on the streets that is Muslim, they do not know if she is Sunni or Shia. When our kids are being bullied, they don't know what sect of Islam their families follow. They just know that that kid is Muslim. When our masajid are being attacked, nobody does their research to figuring out who the imam is and where he came from or what madhab. They just know that you're Muslim. We have to start operating in the same way that the Islamophobes operate. We are one, sisters and brothers. All we have right now in our community is each other. We cannot count on anyone else outside of our community to stand with us if we don't stand with each other. If we are not sincere in calling ourselves sisters and brothers in Islam, then we are not to be mad at Ted Cruz and Donald Trump and Rubio and Pamela Geller and Terry Jones, because they hear about the things in our community. One thing that we're not good at in our community is that we are very public with our divisions. Our opposition, sisters and brothers, they have a lot of divisions. They don't agree all the time either. But they are united around evil. Evil unites them. Us, sisters and brothers, we have an opportunity to unite around the values and the principles that we all share in this room. And that is our beloved Prophet, alayhi salatu salam. This work that I personally do, sisters and brothers, when I think about our beloved Prophet ﷺ, our Prophet was a racial justice activist. He was a human rights activist. He cared about the environment. He was an environmental justice activist. Our Prophet, there's a hadith that says, our Prophet said, pay the worker before the sweat on his forehead dries. That tells me that our Prophet was for workers' rights, that he would be leading the campaign to raise the living wage. But our Prophet was also a feminist. Our Prophet always uplifted women around him, whether they were his wives or his daughters. So if our Prophet was for women's rights, if our Prophet was for black rights and immigrant rights and workers' rights, and our Prophet cared about how we took care of the environment of the earth around us, then who are we not to be those things if we're following in the seat of the Prophet? So when people say to me, why do you do this? I say to people, why aren't you doing this? The question is not for me. And I also want to challenge this notion, because I get challenged, so I'm going to be honest in this room. A lot of people say to me, Sister Linda, sometimes you are aggressive. You are angry. I always tell people, please don't ask me why I'm angry. I want to know why you're not angry. There are injustices happening all around us. Islamic Relief. I was at a fundraiser, and I remember last year I spoke. We were raising money to build wells in Africa. I was very proud. I was like, my group, we're going to build our own well. That's what we're going to do. That's in Africa, and we should do that. And I encourage you and recommend you that you do that and you support our sisters in Africa to make sure they have access to clean water. But did you know, sisters and brothers, right here in Flint, Michigan, your fellow Americans are being poisoned by the water. They can't even cook or take baths or drink water. Not in Africa. In the greatest nation on earth, in the most wealthiest nation on earth, you have people right here in your own state who don't have access to clean water. I remember just last year, right here in Michigan, the electricity department was like turning people's electricity and water off because they couldn't pay their bills. That poverty causes people to not have access to water. How does that make sense? How is that okay for us to be living in a state or in a country when our neighbors 10 miles away, 15 miles away don't have access to clean water? These are the kind of places where Muslims need to show up. This is the time for us to say, not in our state, not on our watch, because maybe there might not be a lot of Muslims that live in Flint, but what if that were to happen here in Dearborn? Who's going to come stand with Dearborn if Dearborn wasn't standing with people in Flint? This is what it means to build alliances and to show up for other people, not just from a place of humanity, but from a place of Islam, because this is exactly what our faith teaches us. I want to conclude by saying, sisters and brothers, once again, that I am very honored and privileged to be here in this space. And I am invested in progress of our community. I am invested in particular to young people. Sayyid Hassan Kazwini said this: it is you who are going to write the history books for generations to come. And I want you to ask yourself a question. What are you going to write about? What is going to be your legacy? What is our legacy? What are we leaving for our great-great-grandchildren to come? Are we going to write a story of division? Are we going to write a story of weakness? Are we going to write a story of defeat? That's not the story, sisters and brothers, that I'm going to write. I'm going to write a story of unity across race, across geography in the United States, across gender, across sect of Islam. I want to write a story of victory. I want people to talk about the victories of the Muslims who were living in 2015 and 16 and 17, people who lived in the 22nd century. That's the story that I want to write, sisters and brothers. And I want you young people to know, there is nothing special or extraordinary about me. I am a mother. I have a 16-year-old son, a 15-year-old daughter, and an 11-year-old daughter. I work in nonprofit. I'm barely making it in a place like New York City. But what I have, sisters and brothers, is something that we should all have in this room. I have no fear. The only thing that I fear is I fear Allah, and that is it. So there is no Islamophobe that I am afraid of. I am not afraid of losing my job. I'm not afraid of poverty. I'm not afraid of the rooms that invite me and then disinvite me. I don't worry about all that. All I know is that I am setting an example for my children. And it is up to us to ensure that when we are all not on this earth anymore and death is inevitable for all of us, we are all going to meet it one day, that it is our responsibility for generations to come that they continue to want to be Muslim and continue to want to be publicly Muslim and to continue our beautiful faith in this country, the United States of America, where it has never existed without Islam, and we want to make sure that it stays that way. Assalamu alaikum. Thank you so much, sisters and brothers. Very humbled and honored to be here in this space with you all.